Luke Skywalker spent a few months in the desert building his own lightsaber using the Force. I reckon we can probably do that a little bit faster in Blender today. Okay, so I've got an image here. I'll make sure that the link to this image is in the description of the video, and it's a reference that I've already rendered out, and I'm just going to drag and drop this in. Okay, and if we right click on this, go to snap, selection to cursor, that'll just put the image right in the middle. Okay, the only other thing we're going to do with this image is I'm going to grab it with G and I'm going to move it back with Y on the Y axis just a little bit so it's not in the way. Then if we press 1 on the numpad to go back into forward front view, we can add in a cylinder. Okay, and we want to make sure we have these settings here. I've already typed these in, but verts you want 48 and radius you want set to 0.316. Okay, that'll make sure that your cylinder lines up perfectly with this reference image I've made. Now if we rotate this by pressing R, 90 and enter, you can see that it lines up pretty perfectly with the top and bottom of these ridges here. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to move this along on the x-axis. So we're going to press G and then X, and we're going to move it along until it aligns with this right edge down here. Okay, and then we're going to move this edge so it aligns with this first divot. So I'm going to go into enter mode by pressing tab. I'm going to select all those verts down here. I'm going to press G and X, and we're going to move this along until it gets into place. If we need more precise control, you can just hold down shift while you're moving and put that perfectly into place. Now we need to add a loop cut that goes right down the middle of here. So I'm going to press Control and R, and hovering over the middle, it'll add a loop cut in. If I left click, I'll be able to slide it around, but I want it just left in the middle, so I'm going to right click again and that'll pop straight in the middle. And then I'm going to press Control and B to bevel this edge, and if I just drag out, that'll give us two edges, and if I line those up with either side of the metal strip and left click, that'll be in place. Now what we need to do is we need to scale these edges down so they go up and down like this. The problem is if we select this side and then hold down shift and select the other side, then if we press S to scale, it'll scale on every axis, right? Which we don't want. We don't want it to be moving left and right. We don't want to be moving on the x-axis. So we need to exclude it from the x-axis. So what we do, once we press S for scale, we're going to press shift and X, and now it will only be scaling up and down. Okay, once again you can hold shift down to get more precise control, and when you find a place you like, left click, and that should be perfectly snapped into place. Now we don't have to do this all the way along. We're going to use a tool instead to replicate this. We're going to use the Array Modifier. So if we go up to the modifier stack, which you'll find under the little spanner icon, okay, next to the wrench, and we give it an Array Modifier, you'll see that it's made a copy straight underneath of the same object. Well, we don't want it underneath, so what we're going to do is we're going to change some settings here. Where it says relative offset, at the moment it's offsetting on this axis, so we're going to set that to 0, and we're going to go down to the Z axis and we're going to type in -1, and you can see there it's now added one in straight behind the first. And if we go to where the number says count, the number next to that, and we just increase this number, okay, to 9, then we'll get this. But what you can see here is it's not quite aligned properly. To make sure that it gets aligned into place, what we're going to do with these two rows of edges still selected, we're going to scale again, but this time instead of excluding the x-axis, we're only going to scale on the x-axis. So we're going to press S to scale and then X to scale on the x-axis, and then if we put it roughly in place, hold down shift for precise control, and somewhere around there looks pretty good. So I'm going to left click to confirm that, and then we can just go into object mode with tab and apply that modifier. I'm going to press Z and go into solid and just have a look at what we've got here. So this is that whole array already done. I'm going to press 1 and go back into wireframe, because there is one problem. Actually, I'll keep it in solid. There is one problem with this. If we press tab to go into edit mode, if we select one of these verts and move them with G, you can see that these verts aren't joined, and we want them to be joined. So what we're going to do is we're going to select everything with A. We're going to press Alt and M, and we're going to merge by distance. And all this is going to do is any verts that are in the exact same place or very, very close to each other, they're going to be merged into one vert. They'll join together. So by distance, click that, and you can see there it is removed 384 vertices. And we can select this now, and that's joined together. Lovely. Right, so if we press 1 again to go back into the front view, we now need to continue on with this little piece here. And to do this, what we're going to do is select this row of verts here, the last sort of tall row of verts. I'm going to hold down Alt while I select this, and that'll give us the whole loop cut. Then if we press Shift and D, it'll duplicate that cut. And before we do anything else, I'm going to press X, which will constrain us to just the X axis. I'm going to slide it along to here, and I'm going to left click. Then to join it to this one here, I'm going to press Alt and Shift, and I'm going to select that. So we've got both of these loop cuts selected at the same time. I'm going to bring up the search, which depending on your settings might be a different button, but on mine it's the space bar. I'm going to do a search for, for bridge edge loops. And if you select that, you'll see that it's joined those two edges together with an edge loop. Okay, so then we're going to select this whole loop again with Alt and left click. I'm going to extrude it with E. I'm going to constrain it to the X axis with X. I'm going to drag that along. Let's go back into wireframe mode here with Z and then select wireframe. Okay, and I'm going to extrude again, but this time instead of dragging it out, I'm going to just scale it up with S. I'm going to align this to the top and select. Then I'm going to extrude it again. Once again, press X, bring it along to about here. Extrude X, bring along to here. Extrude again with the A key, X, bring it along to there. Then we're going to extrude with E. We're going to scale down to about here. It's always best doing these parts in vertice mode, like by pressing 1, so then you can see exactly where these are lined up to. And I'm going to extrude again with E, press X, let's just bring it to the end of here, the end of these like notches, extrude X, bring it to the other end, extrude X, and finally bring it to the very end here. Now if we rotate around this, you can see we've got an open cap here. So to join this, I'm going to press E to extrude, and I'm going to scale again, bring it down to about here, leave like a sort of centimetre gap, extrude, scale, bring it in a little bit more, press Alt and M again, but instead of merging by distance, just press collapse, and that'll give us a face on the end. The only other thing that we want to do at the end here is select this loop cut around the edge with Alt and then click to get that loop cut, and we're going to bevel the edge like we did earlier with the bevel tool with Control and B, and just slide that forward a little bit, about that far, you know, a couple of millimeters basically would be in real scale. Then before I enter that, I'm just going to add a few extra cuts by scrolling up on the mouse wheel. So I'll give it 3 or 4 cuts and then confirm that. That just gives us a nice smooth edge around the bottom. I didn't do that on the original. It's better look. It looks better if you do. Right, so that's starting to look pretty good now. We've got most of the bulk of the lightsaber actually done. I'm going to go back into forward view, and I'm going to press Z and go into wireframe, and this part gets a bit repetitive, but it's straightforward. I'm just going to extrude and scale, extrude and X, extrude and scale. Okay, holding down shift to get precise control, extrude X, extrude X, and then S to scale, because this one goes at an angle. Then extrude X. You might be sensing a pattern here. Extrude S to scale, extrude X, and you just keep going along like this, just extruding and scaling up and down to give you the various parts. Like I said, it is a bit repetitive, but it's straightforward, and if you're just learning Blender, stuff like this is pretty, it's good like modelling exercise, just to get used to the keypad controls. So extrude and X, E, S, shift for precise control, extrude X, and we're nearly done. Extrude S, extrude X. Don't worry about getting these lined up too perfectly, by the way. It's the original reference image that I used was like completely out of whack. That's why I rendered this one out quickly. The reference image you're looking at is like one of the first experiment that I did at making this lightsaber. So once you get right to the edge there, okay, I'm going to press tab to come out of edit mode. I'm going to have a look at this in solid view, and you can see here we've got a face at the end, which we don't want, because you need a hole at the end of the lightsaber for the blade to come out. So I'm going to go back into tab, and with this face selected, if you haven't got it selected already, then just press 3 to go into face select mode and select the edge, and I'm going to use I to inset. I'm going to bring it down to, I don't know, about here. I'm going to delete that face, 2 to get edge select mode, and alt click on the edge, E to extrude, and X to just scale it in a little bit. Okay, you don't need to go all the way down, just bring it in a centimetre or 2 inside, and that should do. Right, that's the bulk of the modelling done now, and it's starting to look pretty good. One problem that you may have noticed is that we have all of these visible faces, so we need to fix the shading on them. The way we do this, if we go into edit mode and select everything with A, okay, and then go to face and shade smooth, then that'll smooth the faces out, but as you can see, it gives us this horrible shading effect. You get this like weird, it looks like a shadow, but it's not a shadow. The way to fix that, if we go down to this menu on the right hand side, the object data properties panel, we go to normals and auto smooth, and now it looks really nice. Right, so the next thing we need to tackle is these little notches around the side. Okay, I found that the best way of doing this is to go into the top mode, press 3 so you're selecting faces, and you can see the midpoint here where the red line is for the x-axis. If we select 2 above it and 2 below it, okay, and then press 1 on the numpad to go into front view, extrude. You shouldn't have to press an axis, it should only go up. Just extrude this to roughly be at the top and click to enter. The problem is, you can see we've got like a curved edge here, and we don't want that, we want it to be flat. So what we're going to do is press scale with all of these 4 top faces selected. We're going to press scale S, and we're going to scale on the Z axis, so I'm going to press Z, and you can see that's starting to scale there, and if we just press 0 it'll flatten them out. And then if we go back into front view and we can put this into wireframe, I'm going to press G to move these faces and I'm going to lock it on the Z axis, put it right where we want it, and then I'm going to press S to scale in every direction and bring it down like this, and then click. And if we have a look at that again, that looks pretty good, right? Now, instead of doing this all the way around, what we're going to do is we're just going to duplicate this around the object. Okay, so the quickest way to do that, the reason I said to make it 48 verts is so that we can just do it by going, if we get count 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then start again, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Leave a gap of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold down shift, 1, 2, 3, 4, leave 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can use checker deselect for this, but it's more straightforward just to count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So then basically you should have an alternating pattern of 4 gaps, then 4 filled in faces, 4 gaps all the way around. When you have that, press delete faces and get rid of those. Okay, now if we select the top 4 faces by just holding shift down, select those, and then press Control and plus, that'll increase the selection by 1 face all the way around. Okay, and then what we're going to do is press Control and D, which will let us duplicate. I'm going to press right click, which will move it back to where it was. I'm going to press P and separate by selection. What we've done there, if I come out of edit mode, if we hide the original cylinder, we've just got this one left. Okay, I'm going to reselect this, and it's its own object, but it has the same pivot point as the original object. And what that means is if we press 3 and we rotate it by R, 6, 0 and enter, right? And then I'm going to duplicate it again with Shift D, R, 6, 0, enter, Shift D, R, 6, 0, enter, Shift D, R, 6, 0, enter, and one more time, Shift D to duplicate, R to rotate, 6, 0, enter. Then if we bring back our original model, now we have it going all the way around the outside, right? So I'm going to select all of these, make sure you don't select this reference image as well. Select all of these and press Control and J, and what that'll do, what that should do, there we have it, we'll join them all into one object again. But we'll have the same problem here we had before when we joined up those the array. These objects aren't actually joined to this object. So we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to select everything with A, Alt M, merge by distance, remove 50 verts, and now that's joined again. And it's looking pretty good, right? Like, that's the lightsaber done apart from the switch control panel. So if we press side view again, and we're going to go into wireframe mode, I'm going to add a loop cut with Control and R in edit mode. Control R, I'm going to slide that along to line it up with the side of the switch panel. And then if you have a look here, there is a little bit of a gap between this vert and that one. So I'm going to add another loop cut with Control R, slide it along, and I'm going to leave just a millimeter or 2 gap, right? And then before we extrude up this, I'm just going to deal with this little sort of divot bit here. Okay, if you press 3 and hold down Alt and just click one of the bottom or top edges, it'll select this whole loop cut. And then if we go to face, extrude along normals and pull it down until it's lined up, select, that gives us that that little gap that goes all the way around, the little cut in section. So now we can go into top view in edit mode, and we're going to select faces on either side of the x-axis, just like we did before. only instead of doing 2, we're going to do 3 of each side. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Going to go back into front mode with 1 on the numpad, extrude with E, scale with S, Z, 0, enter. And then I'm going to move this with G up and down, press Z to lock it to the Z axis, and I'm going to put it to the bottom of this like copper strip, which is about there, right? Then if you select this face, shift and select the other one, go back into front view, extrude it up to like there. It gives you a little lip on either side, which is what you should have. Right, so that is actually the main modelling of the lightsaber done. We need to add a few more parts. The blade will be another object and the buttons will be another object, but apart from that, this is the main object actually finished. So what we're going to do is we're going to press 1 on the numpad, we're going to go back into wireframe mode, and we're not in edit mode here, we're in object mode. I'm going to add a new object. It's going to be a cube. Just scale that down, move it into place with G, and I'm going to make it about the same size roughly as one of these buttons. Actually, before we do this, I'm just going to move it up with G, go into edit mode and select this backside face and delete it. We don't need that face, right? So then we can go back into forward view, wireframe, move it into place with G and scale. This doesn't have to be perfect. I just did the original buttons by eye, so like I wouldn't worry too much about having these exactly lined up because it's not necessarily accurate anyway. Just move these into place with the arrow keys until they look right. And then I'm going to scale it on the y-axis. Something like this. Now if I have a look at this in solid view, I can just press G and Y. And I think I want the button to be sticking out about that far. So just stick it kind of half into the mesh, half out. Okay, and there's one of the buttons done. I'm going to go back into wireframe. I'll select that first so I can see what I'm doing. Shift and D to duplicate, X to move it on the X axis, and just slide this into place, right? Okay, that looks about right to me. Now we need to do these two buttons here, or indicator lights or whatever they're supposed to be. So I'm going to shift and D once again. I'm going to move this roughly into place and just scale it until the top and bottom line up. G and X, so it lines up with that edge down the back side roughly. Then in edit mode, let's select those verts here, G and X to move this into place. Then if we scale it with S on the Z axis right to 0, that'll make it into a triangle. And then just like we did before, we're going to press Alt and M, remove two vertices by merging those doubles. Okay, the only other thing I would probably do with this is just move it slightly into the mesh further with G and Y and just push it in so it's not sticking out quite as far as the buttons are. Somewhere like that maybe. I think that looks pretty good. Right, go back into wireframe mode, Shift and D to duplicate, right click to put it back where it was. I'm going to rotate it with R 180 and flip it the opposite direction. Then just G to move, X to keep it on the X axis, and move that into place. And if we look at this in solid mode, it now should look something like this, right? So I'm going to select these two buttons and I'm going to press Ctrl and J because we can just make them the same object. Okay, And once we've got that done, that is pretty much all of the model, and the only thing that we need to now do is to add the blade, right? So we're going to do that by going into edit mode, and I'm going to select this entire inside ring. Okay, that's the ring that we pushed in earlier on, and I'm going to duplicate this with Shift and D, right click so it goes back to its place, P to separate by selection. Go out of edit mode into object mode, just click off the object and then select the lightsaber and then press H to hide it. Now if we select this thing, I'm going to press 2 to go into edge select mode and alt click, then I'm going to press G and X to move it out a little. Once that's out, I can go back into object mode and press alt H to unhide, and then I can figure out how long I want this blade to be. So looking at this lightsaber, I would say if I press G and X, maybe something like this. For the render that I'm making, you're not going to see the end of the blade anyway, but if you did need to see the end of the blade for whatever reason, I would say maybe make it this long, which would be what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 11 units, 10 or 11 units past the end. And I'm just going to select there. I'm going to press F to give this a face. I'm going to press Control and B to bevel the edge, and you can just change how many cuts you want to give it by moving the middle mouse button. I don't want to give it too many cuts though, so something like that. Select that, that looks fine. Right, I'm going to rename this part Blade. I'm going to name this cylinder to Lightsaber. This one's going to be RB for right button. This one's going to be LB. And these are going to be switch. Okay, I don't actually know if they're even supposed to be buttons or the lights, but whatever. Right, so that is the modelling done, guys. I'm going to have part 2 up where we're going to texture this thing, render it out, make it look really cool. I'll show you how to do the glowing blade effect and all the rest of it. Okay, so join me in part 2 for that video.